Howdy, folks. Today, Dolly Parton died at the age of 80, and the world is going to be upset about it um, because she was such a star. And I don't mean a star, I mean uh, she was the kind of person that everybody should have been trying their best to be. Not only was she talented, but she was also very philanthropic with her money. Her husband, Carl Dean, passed away in 2025. So she has become the center of the question that happens regularly in these situations as to what's next. The especially interesting fact is when somebody passes away, and then when their significant other passes away, there's a lot of confusion as to what happens, especially in North Carolina. And the big question is well, what happens? Well, there's a couple of things that we can say, but not, it depends on how everything goes out. So there's 5 possible buckets that we can consider what happens next for her. And the reason why there's 5 different buckets is because we don't know how she had it set up at all. Did she have a trust? Did she just throw everything to probate? Did she sell off the assets of Dollywood? Did she what does all the royalties from any of her wonderful and fun movies she did? What happens to those? So if Dolly owed several different assets and several different things that would give them a income, well then there's different ways of handling it, right? So let's get in a little bit deeper. So if the assets were titled in her individual name, probate would happen unless another mechanism applies. And what I mean by that is her and her husband never had any kids. So if there was cousins, second cousins, brothers, sisters-in-law, if she didn't have a will, or if she died intestate, then all of those people would get, a share of that particular pie. But if the assets in a revocable trust, then generally it goes outside of probate and it gets handled by a trustee. And that trustee will give people, what the trust says that they are due. And in other cases, it will, they will get, exactly what the trust says. Then the trust gets closed. IRA and retirement accounts, well, if they have a beneficiary designation, like it might be to libraries or bookmobiles or something like that, then it automatically goes to them. There's no going through the courts or anything else like that for that. Life insurance is the same way. If she had life insurance and once the life insurance paid for all the funeral expenses, etc., then that itself will go to those beneficiaries. And a lot of people say, well, you know what, we need our cut. Well, I'm sorry. If there's 5 people in line for that particular piece of property and there's $1,000, then those 5 people are fighting over, $1,000. They're thinking that they're going to get $5,000, not $1,000 a piece. So, and then there's other things too, business interest. It depends on the entity and the documents that they created, and the reason is because the estate plan will have those particular documents to which they can turn around and use for just about everything. If it's a trust, then it goes into a certain trust. If it goes into this, it goes into a certain account. Then it goes to, over here or over there. You really don't know. And then you have her music copyright and royalties. And a lot of that will depend on the estate, the trust, the entity administration. So if she had Dolly would taking in all of her music royalties from everything that she had in place, then that would be probably a good scenario for her to have. The real estate, it all depends on how it's titled. If it's titled in her name, then if it has to go through probate, well, it depends on the jurisdiction as well, and the jurisdiction is going to dictate if it's in, I mean, she passed away in Tennessee, so it's going to be under Tennessee probate, and Tennessee probate's set up somewhat similar to North Carolina, but you never know. I mean, there's always these offshoots. And most of her personal property, their wills, trusts, beneficiaries, arrangements, or probate. I mean, most of the time it's either, for somebody that big, it will be either an arrangement or it will be a beneficiary type of situation, or the trust will decide what has to be done. And then, last but not least, is her charitable interest. She had a ton of charitable interests. She bought thousands of books for kids so they could learn to read. And she has been part of a lot of different programs, such as SPCA, and I mean, just a ton of them. My brain can't even envelop around two of them, let alone the 400 or 500 that she was always on TV saying that she supported. So anyway, but where does Dolly's story, as far as her probate stuff, get interesting? Well, it gets interesting right when she passes away. Dolly wasn't simply a wealthy individual with a house and a brokerage account. She built an entire entertainment and business empire involving music, publishing, intellectual property, Dollywood-related interests, licensing, merchandise, books, films, television interests, charitable organizations. Reuters described her as having sold more than 100 million records and having written thousands of songs. And some of those weren't even sung by her. They were sung by other people. I mean, she was hugely talented individual. So there are potentially two completely different estates to analyze. One, Dolly Parton's personal estate versus the businesses and intellectual property that generate Dolly Parton income. Those are not necessarily the same thing. I mean, you can't go to a grocery store now and not see Dolly Parton on a product in the freezer aisle. You have her cakes. You have her. I can tell you this. I went to a restaurant in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Dolly Parton walked in, and I was sitting there eating some chicken and pastry, and she says, "Honey, that is what I come here for, and that is what is in that freezer case." And I can tell you unequivocally that that is the best stuff I ever had. So she bought the rights to repackage that under her name, and they sell the hell out of it. Sorry for my French. But those items are not necessarily the same thing. It's the intellectual property that generates the Dolly Parton income and her personal estate. Those are two different separate things. And if we take a look at her businesses and intellectual property that generate the Dolly Parton income, that is a separate corporation, which, because her name is on that particular corporation, it would never go into the personal estate because it would be part Dolly Parton Incorporated or something like that. But probate doesn't necessarily mean that everything goes through probate. That's a big misnomer. And I have had fights with attorneys. I've won. Because attorneys think that the law can be argued. and the law is always wrong. And there's always an exception to the law. So this is probably one of the most important points for this particular episode. And a person can die with $500 million estate and have little actually pass through probate. Think about that. For example, Dolly Parton has an irrevocable trust, and the irrevocable trust, well, goes to the beneficiaries, and it does not require probate whatsoever. That's why I keep telling people that if you're going to do anything, don't do a will, because then when it gets probated, probate gets expensive. I tell people to go get a trust, an irrevocable trust, or a revocable trust, and then once you pass away, have that go through that process to the beneficiaries. Generally, it's not administered through traditional probate situations. Meanwhile, Dolly Parsons' personal title property goes through the last will and testament and the executor, and it goes through probate. That would go through probate. Dolly Parton go through an IRA to a named beneficiary. That does not go through probate because it goes directly to the beneficiary designation rather than being dictated by the will. I had a attorney argue with me that the beneficiaries are only suggestion and not where the money should go. I don't think he's practicing anymore, which is good, because who needs that kind of nonsense? Likely, jointly owned property may pass survivorship, and what we mean by that is I have this stick of Burt's Bees. High quality Burt's Bees. There we go. You know, it's backwards. And on the ownership papers for that thing of Burt's Bees, it says Matthew Price, with joint owner with survival of my grandson. So when I pass away, this becomes my grandson's property. It does not go into probate. Do that with IRAs, bank accounts, real estate. You can do it with everything. And likely, you don't have to have it in the will. It's automatic when you pass away. And likewise, joint ownership passes probate just by survivorship. A lot of people don't understand that. So the question shouldn't initially be, did Dolly have a will? The better question is, how was each asset titled? Because understand, she is a rock star. She is a country western rock star. And she had millions in assets. And that's the heart of the modern estate administration. A lot of people just say, well, you know what, I don't have enough money for a will, so what do? They die intestate. And guess what happens? It's more expensive. And you have more people fighting. And, you know, not every family has children that are amenable with each other. Some of them just get down dirty and start beating the hell out of each other as soon as the will's read. Seen it, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But Dolly actually talked about estate planning ages and ages and ages ago, and she says it makes her story even better. In 2020, the San Francisco Bar Association published an article discussing Dolly Parton's efforts to get her estate in order and plan for her legacy, specifically noting the enormous business operations surrounding her. And that is something that each and every person, I don't care if you have $1 in your pocket or you have $13 million sitting somewhere in your front yard, needs to do. Another estate planning discussion specifically describes Parton as someone who had been proactive about estate planning. I'm going to tell you, even Michael Jackson's estate isn't settled because it wasn't all written out, and it was in a trust, and the family, the family was going crazy. Well, that's fine, but if you want to cut people out, cut people out. You want to cut people in, cut people in. That's up to you. But you have to do it. You have to do it in writing, and you have to have it notarized, and you have to have 2 witnesses. Then, when it goes to court, guess what? They don't have a leg to stand on. There is always an attorney who will tell me that that's not the fact. That's not true. Well, in 100% of the cases that I have had to deal with, that has been the case. So, you shouldn't approach this episode as Dolly died, let's see whether she had a will. The approach is, Dolly Parton spent decades building an empire. Now that she's gone, what happens to the empire? Are we going to be able to go to Dollywood and enjoy ourselves and enjoy that fantastic lemonade from the lemonade stand, enjoy that fantastic cinnamon bread from the cinnamon bread person, having to fight with the traffic in order to get a parking space, and the fantastic Christmas shows and everything else that was going on out there? There's much more interesting in this than just a probate episode. This is what you have to do in looking at where you want everything to be. And what I mean by that is you have to have a vision. And that vision is, this is where I want my kids to be. This is where I want my assets to be. This is where my legacy is. This is where I want it to all flow and go after I pass away. And most people just go to an attorney and just sit down and say, well, I want to do an estate plan. Okay, great. Well, what assets do you have? Well, I got rid of everything except this cup. And I want this cup. I want this cup to be sold at auction for $10 million. It's not going to happen. So, you have to have a vision. Dolly in 2020 said, here's what my vision, I want to leave a legacy. I want to make sure that everything that I built is going to go on, and it's going to continue to entertain people long after I'm gone. And she did fantastic. Carl Dean died in March 2025. That was her husband. And believe it or not, he was also in the movie 9 to 5 as her real husband. The estate subsequently became public enough where his will was reported on. And according to the reporting on his will, Dolly was his sole beneficiary, and the will also addressed certain personal property connected to Dolly's music and entertainment career that he signed for or was responsible for during that particular situation. So that means Dolly's estate planning situation in 2026 isn't simply the estate of a married woman whose husband survives her. She became the surviving spouse in 2025 and then died about 17 months later. That creates a fascinating chain. And this is somewhat of a morbid point, but I have often said that if one person in a long-standing relationship passes away, generally within 18 months, the other one does too. There's very few times where I've seen, well, he passed away in 1996 and they're still alive today. Very rarely do I ever see that. It's usually 18 months, 18 to 24 months. So Carl Dean's estate flowed to Dolly Parton. And then now Dolly Parton's estate flowed to Dolly's estate. And depending on how Carl's assets were structured, some of what Dolly inherited from Carl could now be part of her estate, or could have been placed into another structure during the intervening year, which means she could say, well, this is not going to be a good fit for Dollywood, so we're going to go over here. It's not going to be a good fit for any of the companies that I have, so it goes over here. So what happens to music? It's probably the best part of the episode. I mean, Dolly didn't just own physical things. She owned intellectual property. And when we say intellectual property, we're not talking about the sign that says Denny's or the Grand Slam or the names or the trademarks or any of that other stuff. We're talking about all of that. Because the names, the logos, the music, her name on the music, any of the songs that she wrote, the publishing interests, recording streams, licensing rights, her name on Dollywood, the name and image related commercial interests. And these things don't appear when the person dies. Instead, the legal ownership and economic rights continue according to the applicable copyright contract, the entity, the trust, the estate arrangements, or anything else that has been said needs to happen. And you could have something that looks familiar, like Dolly writes Jolene. Copyright and publishing interests goes to her. So she has the licensing. She has the recording. She has the royalties. Even though she has had somebody else do Jolene. The recording, the royalties, and Dolly's business entry and trust, the successor ownership, and goes to the beneficiaries. So her beneficiaries could continue to get royalty checks until they pass away. So that could have been her legacy. Of course, her legacy now too is, Mr. Hart, I will shoot you from a rooster to a hen in one shot, and don't make me think that don't think that I can't do it. And then she storms out. Hell of a legacy. So that's why her estate could continue generating substantial revenue for years, decades, or even 50, 100 years after this, after her death, because she has all that set up. So what about Dollywood? A lot of people are like, well, you know what? I had a family vacation planned in 2 years to go to Dollywood. What about that? Well, it's not necessarily a legal question that should be asked. It's more of a, well, what about type thing. And the better question here is going to be something to the effect of who owns the entity or entities that own and operate the various Dollywood-related franchises and businesses. A corporation or LLC doesn't die when a shareholder dies. If Dolly owns an interest in an entity, her ownership interest becomes part of her estate, unless it's already been transferred to a trust or another structure. So the entity itself continues operating. So Dolly passed away. Doesn't mean Dollywoods go through probate. Does not mean it closes down. Dolly's ownership interest in an entity must be transferred or administered, and that's a huge distinction. And if she has transferred that to a nonprofit, and the nonprofit will get a certain amount of money after they put forward, a certain level of because I never believe in just doing blind. You're on the board. You have partial ownership, and I think that the nonprofit has to do a certain thing with the money that they're given. It doesn't matter if it's Dollywood. It doesn't matter if it's YMCA. It doesn't matter if it's any of those other organizations. And then there's the charitable side. And this is where a lot of people get confused, because it's like, well, you know what? Why is the charitable? Why is the charity having partial ownership? They don't have any ownership rights. Well, yeah, they do. When somebody puts them in their will, they have an ownership right. If they have a piece of real estate that's transferred to them in a will with 4 other people, they have 1/4 right to that 1 acre of property. And if they want to sell those property rights, they can. Nobody can stop it. So the charitable side to this, this could become one of the most interesting aspects of her estate, because not everybody knows all of her philanthropy. And it's not accidental to her legacy, and it's not incidental to it either. Her imagination library alone has distributed an enormous number of books, and she has made major charitable contributions over the years. So the estate may involve charitable trusts, charitable foundations, nonprofit organizations, charitable bequests, intellectual property income, continuing royalties, lifetime charitable commitments, post-death charitable contributions, in which her estate isn't merely the family gets money. It may be the family plus trust plus businesses plus charities plus intellectual property plus continuing commercial operations, because if it's the family that just gets the money, I can tell you the first thing that they're going to do is they're just going to take the money and then they're going to go, or they're going to sell everything off because they're short-sighted. They don't have the business pros to keep it going to have that continued revenue. So this would make a great probate teaching episode as to what to do when you are coming up with your estate plan, what your auctioneer is going to do, what your real estate agent is going to do, where your money is going to go, what kind of books or recurring revenue, where it's going to go. And it might even be just as simple as you have one car. Where does that car go? You have no family. You're the only child and your parents have passed away, and you have no cousins, you have no uncles, you have no aunts. Right? So it makes a great, great exercise in thinking, what's going to happen to me when I pass away? Do I need a trust? Do I need a will? Do I need to go through probate? Do I need to find a charity that I actually like? That I can't answer for you. But what I can do is I can say that out of all of the people in the world who could pass away, who has the heart of a saint, God picked the right one this time. And this is going to be a very good case study in what should happen from this point forward. Have a great week.